Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Beppe, and welcome back to another conference of this Youth for Europe series of talk. Today, we are joined by MEP from Italy, Brando Benifei, and together with me there are Valerio and also from Italy and Wally from the UK. We will have time to talk with them and introduce them, but I want to remind you that Youth for Europe is a project supported and funded by Erasmus Plus program that for the last 2 years has connected more than hundreds of youth youngsters from 6 countries in the European Union discussing and making proposals for the European Parliament about media, the environment, education, and jobs. Today talk, the theme will actually be this last, so education and job, and we will gonna have a discussion with Brando, and we're gonna listen to 2 proposals from our 2 participants. I was also a participant at Youth for Europe during the training course about leadership in Germany, and I was a group leader in the last youth exchange this January in Italy. So without further ado, I want to welcome Brando, who is, of course, as I said, from Italy, and is the legislator who represents the northwest of Italy, and is a member of the Democratic Party, and is also on his 2nd term in the European Parliament. So I remember that the first time you got elected 6 years ago, you were one of the youngest MEP member. So we are also, because this project is about the youth engagement and the youth activism. I think also there will be a lot of great exchanges. So Brando, we'll start with you. I will pass the floor on you. If you want to just maybe talk about your history, your background, about your journey from Italy to the European Parliament, and just to give just give us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, well, first of all, thank you very much for this occasion. Thank you for inviting me to have this debate. In the last term, I've been also the co-chair of the youth intergroup of the European Parliament. So I've been working a lot on projects like this with the youth organization. So I want to, first of all, to thank you not just for inviting me, but for the efforts you are putting in place with projects like this one, the Youth for Europe, to build a strong framework of dialogue, of exchange of young people, which is a huge value is of extreme value for our democracy, especially today, as we are living in a very complicated moment. Having young people that are able to exchange views, to debate, to be learning together with informal education, like this is part of this activity, is part of informal education activity that is important as well as the formal education, is especially important, as I said, in this moment where we need this kind of developing of consciousness as a citizen, as a person living in a world that is very complicated, where only by exchanging views we can and building ideas together we can make our democracy alive. Today we have a lot of authoritarian regimes being developed, and authoritarian ideas being spread all around Europe and outside Europe. We must understand that if we look around us, the democratic and social model that the European Union embodies is now something that is not in the best shape around the world in terms of freedom and social model. But maybe we can talk later about this. I've been, as you said, MEP already for one mandate. Now I'm re-elected as now the head of delegation of the Democratic Party in the European Parliament. I'm the leader of the party in the Parliament, leading a group of 19 MEPs. One of them is the leader of us all, in the sense that he's the president of the parliament, is also from my political party, David Sassoli. And also, we are part of the S&D group, the Socialists and Democrats group, which is the second biggest political group of the European Parliament. I have been active in youth movements, political ones, since a long time. I've been an activist since I was 16 years old. When I was 19, I visited the European Parliament for the first time as a visitor with a project. I would have never thought at the time that I would cross the doors again of the Parliament as a member. But that happened 9 years later when I was 28, elected through I would say a big support from youth organizations and movements. I've been working on youth issues and as a youth representative for many years, also being a local elected person in my region, in Liguria, in Italy. And I got elected. Then I've been working, as I said, on employment affairs, youth issues, social affairs in general, and the Mediterranean area, international relations. Then in this mandate, in the new mandate, when I was re-elected, I got this responsibility to lead my political party delegation in the parliament, but also I'm working on the internal market committee now, especially on the digital issues. I think it's very important that we, especially younger people, are involved in understanding what is the digital citizenship today, what is its opportunities and its risks. One topic that has been so important in these weeks because of the coronavirus crisis, for example, it has been the debate about the tracing apps, which is very linked to the some fundamental values that we have as Europeans. One of them is the protection of personal data, in this case, the health data of people, which are extremely sensitive, obviously. So I'm happy to be here, and I would say that as the last point, that in this work now on the recovery plan, you have heard yesterday the presentation from the European Commission. I will be working again, especially on the youth part. I know that I will deal with the reorganization of the youth guarantee, but also we will have to be very careful on what will happen on Erasmus Plus and other programs, because we risk that in the confusion of the many things, this is put a bit on side. Because as you know, there are people who say that now the idea of exchanges, also of young people, of activities like the one you organize, will need to be reduced because of the pandemic. I think it's a wrong view, because we can combine digital and physical activity without renouncing to the extremely valuable activities like the one that you are organizing in these days with the Youth for Europe.
Thank you, Brando. That was definitely, this last part was very, very happy to hear, especially because, I mean, we are inside Erasmus Plus activity right now. So actually, because you open a lot of topic, and especially, I mean, you talk about the fair job and youth, and this happens also to be the topics that the participants has approach during their youth exchanges and their proposal. So I will start now with the first presentation. So Valerio, who is presenting their proposals for job conditions. So Valerio, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours, and promote your proposals.
Okay, thanks Beppe, and thanks Mr. Benifei for this chance. And let me start sharing. Okay, let's start by the problems. Let's start by why we're doing this. The world of work is changing and bringing new challenges every year, and we know it works like this. We understand it better now with the next challenge of Corona crisis. Yet, young workers, young people are already a little bit disadvantaged in the labor market. We've seen that about 25% of young people are working under poor job conditions, so 1 out of 4. we're talking about age-based discrimination. So being treated unfairly because of our age, or being underpaid, or even the possibility to be used as replacement, free replacement for paid jobs. And the fact that companies often disregard and bypass EU work legislation, labor legislation. And all of these problems can only strengthen our resignation that makes us think that any job condition is better than no job. Any job is better than no job. It's our resignation now. And we can't deny that it has a strong impact on our life. If we don't try to change it, at least instability and migration may represent our future. I don't say it will, but it may. So the risk is real, and personally, I don't want it, and we definitely don't want it. So what are we gonna do to try to get it better? We propose the creation of a new agency under the Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion Department of the European Commission, called, as you can read, European Youth Job Quality Agency. There will be delegates in every EU country, which must remain as politically independent as possible, as much as possible, with the main aim of improving young workers' job conditions and create a friendly labor market for young workers. But we're talking about this, but how will it be done? What are we going to do in this agency? The main functions will be, or would be, giving information to young workers about their rights and giving information to companies about what they should do, about good labor practices, about their duties. Then collecting data about job conditions and reporting them to the EU. And other functions is monitoring, of course, the engaged companies and financial incentives. And I'm going to talk about it in one moment. There are some tools like supporting young workers associations, or create a website with information about the companies included. There will be also a minimum of young worker side. We can set this number, so it's just a general number, 20% to up to 30% in big companies of young worker side. But why should these companies accept this? Why should these companies adopt our aims? Because EU would provide them financial support to, of course, to those who adopt the aims. And they will get financial incentives. But not only that, if they adopt this, the benefits will be also in the corporate image, because they would be known as a company that treats young people right. They will get their place in a website, so they will be known for that. And speaking of which, benefits not only for the companies, but also in the socioeconomic field would be a lot, really. The first one is to raise awareness on worker rights. It is very important. These, in order to get a fair labor market for young people, that is what we want and what we don't have. So reducing social barriers, and as a result, increase general economic stability. That is the main aim that can be achieved through all of this. And so there is a pro for everything, in our opinion. I would like to conclude with our motto, the motto of this project: quality over quantity. Our job is not a joke. And just, I know it's a lot of stuff, so I'll let you get one last look about the proposal, the summary. This proposal that we've done together, me, Fabiola, David, Canio, so Italian and Spanish, with the help of an Hungarian girl. So we know what we are talking about. We're not talking out of nowhere. And I know you will be thinking that we're aiming high, but yes, that's true, we're aiming high. But to get something that we don't have, we have to aim high. We have the chance, and we're trying to make the best of it. And thanks again, Beppe. Thanks, Brando, for listening. I hope you enjoyed, and maybe you will consider this. And thanks. Okay, stop sharing just right here.
Okay.
So,
Thank you
voilà.
very much, Valerio. I also think that it's important to fly high, especially
Yeah,
because we
first.
want, especially during the MEP talks, we definitely show that we are not coming here to play. Like this program has really created a lot of critical thinking between the participants. So now, Brando, I want to ask you if first, if I have some feedbacks about the proposals, and also maybe there is this kind of feeling that when where there is a disconnection between the institution to the citizen on a level like connection between the citizen and the institution. So I think that is also a consideration that inspires this group. So I will leave you now the floor to, if you want to share some thoughts and feedbacks about that, or, want to ask you something more about the proposal to Valerio.
Yes, well, I think it's not flying high. You're asking the minimum. It's not acceptable that even today, yes, there are um, both violations of existing laws, but also the lack of willingness to follow those recommendations that the European Union could not make into laws because of limitations to its competences, but were obvious recommendations. For example, the quality framework for traineeships, on which I've been working a lot, which is a recommendation of the member states to themselves. And it's funny that many member states actually didn't fully implement it for a set of minimum standards for the rights of the trainees. So we have, I think we are talking about the respect for the rights of young workers. And we don't need to consider this as something that needs to mm, to build new legislation, in the sense that the existing laws should be respected, and to
Right.
enforce it. We already have one. We already have one agency recently instituted. It's been the end of the last mandate, and it's still in its in fact, starting phase in this first year now of activity, is the European Labour Authority, which was a work, a big work from our side, from the Parliament side, to have finally a European authority that has the powers to investigate and sanction, with the cooperation of Commission and governments, the violation of worker rights. I've already been myself advocating, and so I go in the direction of what you have been asking, advocating a specialized part of the European Labour Authority dealing with young people's working conditions, because I think that the situation of younger workers entering into the um, into the labor market have some specificity that needs specific attention and protection. So my proposal is, absolutely, I agree with what you have written, also in terms of concrete ways of supporting the respect of workers' rights for younger workers. I think that we don't need to start again a long process of building new agencies, but we need to use the existing European Labour Authority that has been built as a European agency after a long work in these years, by having a strong focus, a strong part of the structure working on youth workers, in the sense of doing the things that you have written, in terms of um, um, verifying the respect of the laws, having also reference points in the member states that can be more a direct interaction element with the labor environment, and promoting also sensibilization for reputational aspects like the one you mentioned. So I think we already have a framework for that. We also have one other platform that was in fact absorbed by the European Labour Authority, but must, I mean, its objectives must be maintained with the same scope. It's the so-called undeclared work platform that was used to monitor the most problematic undeclared work situations in the European Union, exchanging good practices to fight the black market of labor. Now also that, which is an aspect that touches many young people that are not regularly employed, but are irregularly employed against their own interest, must be a matter of specific focus for the European Labour Authority. So I agree with your proposals. I think that we must avoid building an too long and cumbersome process by having already in place an agency that must be refocused. Specifically, I mean, as I said, we already been working on that, having specialized part of the agency working on the objectives that you rightly pointed out to.
Well, thank you, Brando, and again, thank you, Valerio, for your presentation. I think we will be maybe jump a little bit later. Wally now, he's from the UK and he's presenting the proposals Youth Renaissance, which is also talk about employment and transition from, in this case, transition from education to the job experience. So Wally, whenever you're ready, you can start your presentation.
Hello guys, thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much, Beppe, and thank you very much, Mr. Benifei as well. I'm just going to share my screen with you so you can all have a look. You can see my screen while I present. So welcome on behalf of my team. So Ali, Marta, Euphemia, Anna, and myself, Wale. I'm presenting you Youth Renaissance. So what Youth Renaissance actually is, what we're trying to do is obviously help with the transition of university students into the job market. We think this is a very, important thing, especially in Europe, especially in the UK, especially in Romania, especially in Italy. What we're trying to do is just to help, students be able to gain the opportunity today to gain some form of experience and to gain some form of internship or have some form of work experience before going into the labour market. There's a lot of things that have been put in place for us, and the reason why we're doing this. So just going to the. Yeah, so like I said, just an overview. If you look down just below the diagram there, just showing the unemployment rates within the EU, so from Germany to Croatia to different countries on there. So the reason why Youth Renaissance came into action is obviously the problem. And we think one of the most common problems in Europe is obviously, even though people don't have enough experience or to go into the market to get a job, there's always lack of maybe in terms of maybe the condition of which they're working in. It's not always the best in terms of the internship. People have internship, but they're not getting paid enough. So it means that the money which they gain from the internship is below their average wage, or they're not be able to cover their costs of coming into work. And what we're trying to do is to try and help that, to create a better standard of quality of internship, and also give young people that just a bit more experience than they need. So when they come out of university, they have experience in the right role. Just previously also as well, we've got a bit of information just showing that in 2019, as when we were doing our research, there was 3.3 unemployed students, so people under the age of 25 within the EU, which is quite a lot. Our goals, what we're trying to do as well as a goal, obviously we're trying to help bridge the gap. What we're trying to do is to ensure that we implement a policy on companies, on massive companies, to make sure that they're able to obviously not just pay students and graduates a valuable form of wage for their internships, as well also increase the number of internships they have. So there's a lot of companies, massive companies with over 1,000 workers, and they only have 10 spaces for graduates to come in every year. That's quite hard for everyone if that's the only going to be the possibilities. What we're trying to do is, if regulations can be put in place, that these big organizations can have more space for internship, have more space for for graduate opportunities as well. So that's one of the main things. Second and lastly as well, in terms of our action, what we're trying to do as well is obviously to try and improve the quality of opportunities for students. So we're talking from having universities to be able to create some form of club for at the end of the year, at the end of every session, they create a workshop for CV workshop, for interviewing workshops that is compulsory for students. So when they leave university, they have a direction of where they like to go into. They have a direction of what they would like to do. We think this is quite important, as this is a major problem, not just in the UK, not just in Europe, but around the world globally. And that's just a wrap up of what my presentation is about. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Wally, for your presentation. Can you exit the share screen?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you. So again, Brando, I mean, I think that this proposal also opened a lot of, boxes and topics about it. And if you wanted to share also some feedbacks and response to Wally's group presentation, and because I also think that is a path that has really changed in the last years, when from the education, the university to the job experience, it was a little bit more quickly, maybe some years ago than now.
Yes, the issues of this proposal are very important. I mentioned already the fact that there is a recommendation of the Council of the European Union regarding the quality framework for traineeships. I've been working a lot on that, and in fact, the proposals that you made are close to the spirit of to the points, in fact, inside the framework, which has been only partially implemented by the member states, because it's not a piece of law, but it's just a recommendation because of limits to the competences, or at least the perceived limits. We think, as for example, the youth intergroup of the parliament, but also many people working on labor issues in the European Parliament, that we instead should promote, and we ask the Commission for that, a directive on this. We think we have the legal base to do that for a series of reasons, so that we could have exactly the objectives you posed on the connection of the traineeships to the job market and the universities, the minimum income, minimum retribution of the interns. In fact, we have fought against unpaid internships, which is still, unfortunately, one big issue, the basic one, but unfortunately an important one, significant, unfortunately, in terms of numbers. Still, we fought in the last mandate against the unpaid internships, for example, inside the European institutions, and we canceled finally the unpaid internships inside the European Parliament, which were unfortunately still possible until the last mandate. Now we think that we need to upgrade our legislation, and so not just ask the member states to adapt without any obligation the norms to these objectives of the framework of quality of traineeships that I mentioned, but instead of these absolutely not mandatory indications, we want a European law. So we want a directive on this. We have been pushing on the Commission on this, and we will continue to do that, so that during this mandate, there is a European legal act that provides for more homogeneous push for these objectives, on which I have to say some member states, some places, some workplaces some organizations have been already doing, have been already going in the direction, but in a very fragmented and voluntary way, not by a guaranteed rights environment for young people, also when confronted with traineeships that must be quality ones and must be treated as a work experience with learning component, which means that they need to be paid for, and they are not to be considered as a non-work. Obviously, there are differences. There are exceptions also to this based on some specific kind of traineeships, but we must be aware that today there is still a lot of abuse, and it's not possible to just leave it to the willingness of the employers, to be frank.
Thank you, Brando. Thank you, Wally, for your presentation. I want to actually now start a moment a little bit more about questions and opening up a little bit our discussion to this topic. And so we are actually receiving some questions from our viewers, but I will start asking you, Brando. Sometimes is also connecting maybe to whale proposals. There is a lot of efforts we're making on the university level. So for the university educated people who are approaching the job experience, I want to ask you also how the commissions and the institution European at the European level are actually taking also people who came straight to high school to the workplace or came from technical or professional schools.
Well, first of all, the European Social Fund, of which I am the rapporteur for my political group at the moment, the next fund from 2021 to 2027, we are negotiating it. This European Social Fund is a structural fund that is given to each member state, which deploys it normally to regional authorities. For example, in Italy, it's used through the various regions, through calls made by each region on the various social objectives. This social fund is used, it can be used and is used often to support the professional training, the technical schools, the linkage between technical schools and the workplaces. So to ameliorate the technical and the professional institutes with differences, because with the technical ones we talk still about national schools in Italy, for example, and professional ones are completely regionally managed. But apart from these specific differences, all these funds are used for supporting the students in their experiences and their connection between training in school and the workplace. Again, it's a matter of getting the best practices there, the best experiences also coming from the rest of the European Union between us. But that's not the only point. We also activated a European-wide so-called Erasmus Pro program that will start from 2021. Until now, it has been experimented for a few years through a pilot project promoted by the European Parliament. In fact, I was one of the first signatories of this program, this pilot project since 2015, to enlarge the scope of exchanges, not just to the students like the classical Erasmus, but also to young workers in traineeships or apprenticeships, often after school directly without a university study, that would prevent normally from in this situation of today to be able to access an exchange experience under the Erasmus Plus, apart from experiences like the ones of projects like the one that you are a part of, exchanges of of youth organizations, but I mean the individual experiences. They are linked to students of university, that's the classic Erasmus, but also to students of high school and other organizations. Now there is an enlarged array of experiences, but the young workers were excluded. So we enlarged the Erasmus exchange with this Erasmus Pro to connect young workers still in formation, that are still learning in the workplace because it's their first period as trainees or apprentices, to be able to expand a part of this training in another business environment, in another organization, by traveling to another European country and spend some time in another situation. So we have experimented this for a few years. It went very well, a lot of success, a lot of satisfaction for the participants, but also we measured their impact, its impact on the career perspective and in the learning process for these people. And it worked very well in terms of an added value. So it was decided to transform this experimentation into a full-fledged program under the Erasmus+. And this is dedicated exactly to this kind of people, of young people that deserve also, like others, to have a good training exchange experience at European level.
Thank you. You also, I mean, we then touched on the subject of Erasmus Plus, and so we are expecting extended of the Erasmus Plus budgetary period in this next years, and especially connected to the fact that it's very hard sometimes to evaluate the Erasmus Plus programs when it comes on a CV level to a work experience or even an academic experience. How do you think it's a better way to evaluate these kind of programs? And also because the program should be implementing into the evolution of the European identity. When we think about this European identity, also how we can transfer this identity on work rights and access to work, because we came from very, I mean, we are under the same, union, but we are with different countries and different tradition when it comes to work.
Yes, I agree. And what I was saying at the beginning also is that we have an identity now in a very complicated world that is crossed by very complicated tensions related also to different political and social models around the world. In Europe, we have some common ground based on the freedom of organization, of expression, and a social model that is unfortunately under attack also inside the European Union, but also strongly contested in its validity also from other political and social models outside the European Union. And we see that on the social model aspect, in the last 15 years, we have seen a lot of backtracking of problems coming from the successive recession periods, economic crisis, and also wrong policies of austerity, at least this is my opinion, that have limited the cohesion and the convergence of the European Union in terms of social standards also for workers and young workers. So I think there is not an alternative. I want to be very clear. If we don't go this way, there is no way that the European Union can survive, because we are in a world where everything is going at the moment, unfortunately, in another direction, towards authoritarianism, towards lack of social protection. We have still a situation in Europe with, unfortunately, some internal also in Europe situations of tension and of difficulty, but we have a situation where we still have public pension system, public schools, public healthcare. This is not absolutely something that is guaranteed in other, even rich parts of the world. Because if we look at some Middle East countries or to the US, they are not poor countries. And on the other hand, there is not a public safety net as we have in Europe. So I think that we need to go on and to complete and to overcome these differences by the European legislation, by an intelligent use of the European budgets, because otherwise there is no survival for the Union. It's a illusion that the European Union can survive only as a light union in terms of economic governance, which is very light. We need more integration if we want this experiment that is unique in the world to survive. And in my opinion, today, if we don't do that and the European Union breaks apart or it becomes very weak and irrelevant, then the single member states of the Union will have huge difficulties in maintaining even the labor standards that we have today in front of a very harsh world competition, where we don't want to be the ones running, we can say, a race to the bottom, as they say, but instead being the ones that push all the world to have better working conditions for everyone.
Well, thank you, Brando. I think also it was such a good reminder of the strong European identity that, you know, I've been knowing you for a couple of years, and I do always remember how much strongly you identify as a European. And I think also it's very, very important to share this message. So preach to that, definitely. Unfortunately, I mean, there will be so many other things that we can dig into because this topic is like one of the most important topics, especially during this time of lockdowns and, you know, economic crisis that we're facing with the coronavirus pandemic. But unfortunately, we are a little bit rushed over time. So, you know, I want to say thank you to all of you, of course. But we were supposed to have this big event this May in Milan to meeting with MEP members and, you know, showing our proposal. But, you know, the situation make us, you know, move forward and doing other things like these conferences, but we are planning with the Youth for Europe programs and all the participants to travel to Brussels this next October. So we really, really, really hope to meet you again in that case, and maybe, you know, some question that some people has for today, they can save it for the next time that we will see each other, hopefully in person. I want to say a big thank you to Valerio and Wally for their time and for showing their proposals. And also, of course, a big, big thank you to all our team behind the scene that works effortlessly to organize this series of talk. I want to remind you all that you can follow all our talks on our Facebook page and Instagram page. And also, I will kindly remind you to go to our YouTube channel, Youth for Europe. You find every Youth for Europe channel at this name on the internet to see all the amazing videos of the proposals that the participant has been working on for the past 2 years. Again, thank you very much to Brando Benifei for finding the time to sit with us, even, you know, in a physical distance this time. And thank you all to our viewers who are gonna check it, our talks, and, you know, see you next time. Thank you and bye.
Thank you. Bye.